Hi, I'm Tyler Guerrero, a student at the College of DuPage, and I'm here at the Belmont Prairie in Downers Grove to talk to you about planting native plants. First off, I want to start off with where we live. We live in a portion of the Midwest known as the Great Plains. It's a tall grass prairie biome, much like this area here, that is dominated by tall grasses, flowers, with few trees and shrubs. Animals that come and visit here are such as birds, mammals, insects, and other ungulates such as bison and deer. This prairie is very important to our ecosystem. One of the many reasons why it's important is because of the deep roots that it has. These roots can grow anywhere between 8 to 12 feet deep and help the plants tap into the deep water systems that other plants can't reach. It also helps stabilize the soil that's essential for plant growth and the health of the plants overall. These deep roots also help stabilize the banks on rivers and streams. It holds the soil in place and helps prevent harmful runoff from agriculture getting into our water systems. Another important role of the prairie is carbon sequestration, meaning these plants take carbon out of the atmosphere and help store it in the ground, preventing it to come up and hopefully reversing some of the effects of climate change. Another important role for the ecosystem as a whole is that these plants are home to many different pollinators. However, this native landscape is under a great threat. It's estimated only about 1 to 4% of this land still remains today. Much of this is due to human activity. Farmland is a major contributor to this. Monoculture crops and large pasture lands have led to soil erosion and decreased fertility among the land. The large pasture lands have also replaced native ungulates with domestic cows and cattle. This has decreased the amount of grazing done and creates more soil erosion because these lands are normally overgrazed and not treated correctly. The use of fertilizers and pesticides is also a huge contributor in the destruction of this native grassland. Fertilizers and pesticides pollute the soil, water, and airways of the environment. The use of these pesticides and fertilizers creates soil salinization, which is a process in where salts come up and prevent any growth in the area. Fertilizers are also a contributor to stormwater runoff, which finds its way into our waterways, creating algal blooms that could create dead zones within our streams and rivers. Pesticides have also been shown to produce particulates that can travel up to 20 miles from the source. Another large contributor in the destruction of the prairie is the urbanization of humans. This fertile grassland has now been transformed into concrete streets, sidewalks, and steel buildings, replacing much of these grasses that we see here today. The sidewalks and streets also prevent water from being soaked up into the ground and filtered to replace the water that is lost. These two factors contribute to a major cause of habitat fragmentation. This is when habitats become much more concentrated and widely dispersed among a landscape. This has decreased the genetic pool among species of plants and animals alike, as well as creating more instances of human and nuisance activity. You're probably thinking that there's very little hope for the prairie, but I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. We can do many things to help save the prairie, such as planting native plants. Planting native plants is important for soil health. This helps with nutrient cycling with carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. This helps increase the fertility of the soil and helps these plants grow. These plants are perennials, meaning they have a lifespan of about 2 to 3 years, and are very essential to holding in carbon in the process of carbon sequestration. By planting annual plants, you actually harm the land a little bit more, because every time these annual plants die, the carbon that they held in is then released. Another thing that the prairie is helpful for is it's very, very easy to care for. These prairie grasses are naturally going to grow in your lawn. You won't have to mow your lawn, you won't have to apply any fertilizers or pesticides or use extra water in maintaining the health of your own native plant species. So by helping them, you can actually help yourself. The prairie lands help offer ecosystem services and can even help lower your bills. By using less water, not using pesticides or fertilizers, you won't have to care for your lawn as you do right now. These short grasses and annual plants, you have to buy and upkeep every year. But if you plant these native grasses, flowers, they will grow on their own, and you'll let nature take care of it on its own. You can also put your mini prairie in areas that flood in your lawn. This will help prevent a lot of water that seeps in through your home, creating damage, costing you more money. The native plants also prevent invasive species from growing. Because the grasses occupy lots of land and are very, very diverse, it prevents a lot of weeds from growing in your lawn, so you will not have to break your back pulling weeds when you want your lawn to look nice. Native plants will also prevent soil erosion. Their deep root system will keep the soil intact and keep it grounded, so wind and other things will not carry it away. The less fertilizers and pesticides used will prevent some of the soil salinization that can happen. It's very the native grasses can be very diverse, so you're not going to deprive your soil of the essential nutrients it needs, and especially on the banks of rivers and streams, it will hold that soil in place, preventing some of the soil from being put into our streams and rivers. Your native plants will also attract wildlife. Many birds and insects will frequent your house, making it very exciting to look outside your window, along with some mammals and reptiles may find their homes in your plants. And it restores the natural beauty of the landscape. This land, even though it's very brown right now, in the spring and summertime, it's flourishing with vibrant colors of green, yellow, purple, blue, everything that you can think of, along with some of the native animals that come along with it. And most importantly is you can still plant your garden while having native plant species in your yard. And actually it might be maybe a benefit to your garden as well. The deep roots help fertilize or keep the soil fertile because of the nutrient cycling done, and keeps the soil moist. You won't need to use as much water in your garden as you would normally need to. You also won't have to use any fertilizer or pesticide, because a lot of the natural pesticides come with the ecosystem service that these native plants have to offer. Birds will find these insects and help pick off some of the bugs that are eating away at your tomatoes or your cucumbers that you are trying to grow. It's also a natural herbicide just because of the density of these plants. They don't really allow much else to grow in it, so you will not have to worry about weeding your garden every time you go outside. And in fact, sometimes you can even grow edible plants in your garden. Some of the ones that I have had experience with are chamomile and rose hips that are used in tea, and you can eat some flowers that are found in the native grasses as well. You don't just have to plant native plants to help save the prairie. You can donate to a reputable nonprofit such as the American Prairie Preserve or the Nature Conservancy, or even your local nature preserve would be very helpful to maintaining the landscape. You can organize a litter cleanup that would help prevent some of the garbage that might find its way here and that may be hazardous to the wildlife that finds its home in the prairie. You can also support local and organic farms that help maintain some of the soil in the area. And of course, you can educate the public about the preservation of prairie and how the prairie is important in our environment. I think sharing my experience with the prairie is very beneficial for people to hear because they probably have some of the same thoughts that I had. Illinois and states like it are very farm-centered, farm and agriculturally centered, kind of giving them a label of these flyover states just because they're so boring and not exciting to look at naturally. That changed my whole perspective when I watched this video in my environmental biology class called America's Lost Landscape, the Tallgrass Prairie. It made me want to get into the restoration and conservation of prairies a little bit more because I think they're very important to relabeling some of our flyover states and giving them back their natural beauty. Right now this place is very brown and colorless, but it is November, and in the spring and summertime this place is teeming with wildlife and bright colors that I think a lot of people would love to see. And through a lot of the reasons I have given you, I think by planting native plants would be very beneficial to restoring Illinois back to its natural beauty, and I hope this video has helped you realize that, or at least brought awareness to this subject. Thank you so much, and plant native plants.